YouTube. Tyler Securities here. Thank you so much for tuning in. This week we're going to talk about why this real estate market is not another 2008.
Welcome to the Weekly Tea. Look, I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and I'm cool with that.
All right, guys, thanks again, like I said, for tuning in to the Weekly Tea this week. We've got a very interesting topic of discussion. The reason, I guess what inspired me to drop this video, I'm getting a lot of feedback from my clients asking certain types of questions that are kind of alleviating to this very topic. And I want to squash that right now. I want to give you guys solid, concrete information so you guys can make solid, concrete decisions based on whatever you guys are doing out in the marketplace. It's no secret the housing market is on another tear, so to speak. I would challenge you guys, we've been on a tear, we've been on a streak for the last 5, 6, 7 years. And when I say we've been on a tear, in my professional opinion, based on what I'm seeing, we're seeing a period of growth in the marketplace. And I want to continue to reiterate that. Growth. Sam, like, mess up the thing to where I'm like constantly saying growth. We're seeing a lot of growth in our community here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Compared to the national market, in more extreme marketplaces, people are getting concerned, especially with the recent rate increase. People are scared we're going to see another bubble like we did in the mid-2000s because they're on face value seeing some similarities. I want to squash that. I just wholeheartedly disagree, and here's why. I want to talk to you guys first about, let's define what a bubble means, or what is a bubble. In order to determine if the current housing market is in a bubble, one needs to ask, what constitutes a housing bubble? A bubble is present when the price of an asset is rising faster than the fundamentals can justify, to keep it simple. Often driven by overly optimistic speculation or loose financing. And I want to highlight an asterisk, loose financing. We'll talk about that later. Rising prices alone don't necessarily constitute a bubble. Neither do interest rate increases. Unlike the last housing boom, one could argue, especially since the pandemic, this latest boom has been pretty justifiable if you slow down, you stop, and you really think about it. The demographics of the US were already supporting a housing growth, period. If you remember back when COVID started, a lot of businesses and companies switched to alternative methods in the workplace. They made a lot of their teams stay home. They started utilizing technology to be more efficient, to the point where they didn't need their office space, right? Everybody was kind of setting up camp at the house, and everybody had a home office space. If you really stop and think about that, I remember getting contacted by a lot of my clients who were also self-employed and had commercial space that we ended up selling for them because they realized they could continue to do their business out of their house. Or I had friends who lived across the country who were working for extremely large companies that they could now do their job remote, and they either moved back home or they moved to a more affordable or desirable location because they were able to keep their job and work remote. With that flexibility, with that convenience of working from home, a lot of people kind of switched gears into planting more roots, and I saw a lot of people just want to buy real estate because they wanted to buy something that they could work out of or they could run their business out of. Some people sold their place to get something bigger, whereas they could have had their primary residence, they could have had their office space. They actually sold both to kind of consolidate them once in one central location. There's all sorts of stuff like that, right? You take that into consideration with the low inventory levels we were seeing, you could see the demand just increase. Interest rates at the time, just because of where the market was, were extremely attractive as well. And it created this cluster, right? It was just a big boom. It was a refi market, it was a seller's market. It was absolutely crazy, during that pandemic. If we compare this back to 2008, remember earlier in the video when I talked about loose financing, a lot of buyers were in the marketplace purchasing with loose financing. The mortgage guidelines that were in place back then, it's no secret, were extremely loose to be kind about it. You didn't really have to show much to be able to buy XYZ, or you didn't necessarily have to be in a huge cash position to do what you were trying to do, let alone prove that you had a job and that you had, employment and could prove income coming in. And so that's why you saw those mortgage securities fail, because at one time, the market just got flooded with foreclosures. And there's a kind of an old saying in real estate, it's all about location, 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 location. And the real secret in real estate is just understanding supply and demand. In my personal opinion, I mean, if you go back the last 100 years, I'm pretty confident the real estate prices have only dropped one time, and it was in '08 during that unique scenario. So I constantly hear people saying they're gonna wait to buy, and it's just wild. Like you guys need to look at the data, understand what's going on, why this happened, why these are two totally different scenarios, what has been put in place since then, et cetera, et cetera. So anyways, that's why '08 occurred. As far as this market, to get back to the topic of the video, we've clearly defined what a bubble is. We've clearly defined why '08 happened. And then I'm trying to explain to you guys now, kind of this growth period that we're seeing. It's no secret, the inventory levels are still near historically low levels. And the latest interest rate hike is help softening prices. As far as making prices come down, that's not happening, nor will it. For prices to come down, we would need to see an influx of inventory, right? Because here we have supply and here's demand. If we have, just because interest rates rise, it makes the real estate itself more expensive to buy. It will definitely soften the demand, but we are still so low. To get this price, this is what has to occur. Now, I don't see any foreseen circumstance that could happen, or anything that I think will happen, that will flood the marketplace with inventory to make that switch. Another reason through the pandemic, another reason why prices skyrocketed, the cost of new construction increased because we saw a disruption in the supply chain as well as the labor chain. We're still in that. Like we're not even out of that yet. It's still extremely difficult to source certain materials and certain types of labor given how much demand that we have. But what I'm trying to say is, when that supply chain got disrupted, the supply just continued to get shorter, and demand is just whoosh. And that's where we're at, and that's where we're going to be until we see more inventory at the marketplace. I will say it is softening with the latest interest rate hike, because instead of buying a $350,000 house because the interest rates are up a point or two, you may be looking at a $290,000 house now, or a $300,000 house. So that is definitely softening the activity because it's limiting people's buying power. But again, there's so much demand that's not really, slowing things down, so to speak. And one more thing, to qualify, for a mortgage to buy real estate now, there are so many guidelines in place now that weren't in place back in '08. Buyers are much more vetted. I actually saw a figure, we can go back and we can pull up some data maybe on the screen here or over here. I'm not sure where the space is in the camera, but I think 23% of all real estate purchases right now are done by cash buyers. So the money that's in the system, they're better buyers right now compared to back in '08. Back in '08, it was loose financing. People didn't have money. It was kind of this faux, it was just a giant fake facade. And no wonder, it came down crumbling. What we have here now, we have amazing buyers. I've got conventional buyers putting 20, 30% down who are losing deals to cash buyers or other conventional buyers that are maybe taking things a little bit more to the extreme by like waiving inspections and waiving appraisals. Buyers now have jobs. They've been at their job for a long period of time. They've got reserves. They've got good credit. They've been vetted way more than the buyers we saw in the mid 2000s. So as far as the mortgage-backed securities we have floating around, originating around now, much stronger files than back then. So because of all of those reasons I just shared with you guys, this is why we're not in another housing bubble, so to speak. I'm not denying, what's going on with the stock market and potentially going into a recession. I'm just saying from my professional opinion, looking at it from a macro and micro perspective, I saw a marketplace or a demographic that was destined for growth, and we're still in that growth. And the fact that I'm servicing, Fort Wayne, Indiana, as well as the Grand Strand down in South Carolina, both marketplaces are very similar. But here in Fort Wayne is one of America's most affordable cities and has been for a long period of time. We have a very healthy local state economy, and we're still experiencing growth. And those of you who live here in the community, you guys are well aware of all the new construction and all the new development going on downtown and on the north side. All of this stuff is relevant, guys. So yeah, that is why this is not another 2008. If you guys like this type of content, check me out on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I'm even on Discord. You can join me there. If you're not already, subscribe to the channel. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. We'll see you guys next week.